Welcome to American Narratives, where we talk about the bold, unexpected, and deeply human side of career change. I'm Marianne Pina.
And I'm Joe Fracham. This season, we're doing something a little different. We're hitting pause on the linear success story and hitting play on the pivot.
Because let's be honest, life rarely goes according to plan. Sometimes we choose change, and sometimes change chooses us. But either way, those turning points shape who we are and how we lead.
American Narratives was created by CMP to share real stories of identity, resilience, and leadership. And this season, we're zooming in on the moments when people pivot the script.
You'll hear from leaders, executives, change makers, and everyday people who've reinvented their careers and themselves with clarity, courage, and a whole lot of honesty.
So, if you're in the middle of a change, considering one, or just curious how people bounce forward, not back, you're in the right place.
Let's get into it. This is American Narratives Season 4. Welcome to American Narratives. I'm Marianne Pina.
And I'm Joe Fracham, and today we're diving into the moments that redefine us, career pivots. At CMP, we believe every story matters as they challenge, enlighten, and inform our own career decisions and paths.
Our aim is to go beyond platitudes and reveal the real human experience behind each pivot, the courage, uncertainty, resilience, and reinvention.
Today's guest is Janet Collinsworth. Janet, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Janet, I've known for a few years. Janet has an incredible story that we're so excited to actually bring into our studio today. She's a founder and CEO of Agape Resources, an assistance center in Jericho Village, a Texas-based entrepreneur with over 30 years in accounting, finance, nonprofit leadership, and forensic consulting. Talk about an interesting combination. I don't know if I've ever said all those words in one sentence before. So, Janet,
welcome.
Thank
Great
you.
to have you here. We
Thank
look forward to
you.
hearing your
I'm
story.
excited to visit with you.
You betcha.
Well, we're going to kick it off. We want to know a little bit more about you, so we have a few quick rapid-fire questions for you. First one, what was your first job?
I worked, probably babysitting. That was probably my very, very first job.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Babysitting.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. And then my next one was I worked at a drugstore in high school.
Okay, good ones. What were your career aspirations as a teenager?
To go to college was kind of the given with our family. We come from a long line of teachers and educators, and so everyone, especially the women, were college bound, and that's a whole long story with heritage. My grandmother actually went to TCU back in the 20s, and so it's been a long story. And aspirations were at first I thought I wanted to be an English teacher.
Oh,
and I know, right? It doesn't even fit
You're
anymore.
too nice to be an English teacher.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved the words and the writing and all of that. But when I got to college, I realized I'm not gonna be able to support myself, my family, and that was really important for us as we were growing up. And so
I love it.
I changed.
Favorite book?
Ooh, well, so I'm a pastor, so I have to say I do love the Bible, and it is one of my favorite books. But nothing comes to mind, really. Sorry.
Okay. No, that's fair. The Bible's a good one.
The Bible's a good one.
Yeah, no one's going to argue with that.
Yeah, I know.
I understand it's a bestseller.
Yeah.
Right?
It's been around a while.
Been around a while. Yeah.
Okay, last one. What's your favorite movie?
Gone with the Wind.
Oh, love it.
With Matrix being a close second. Now, isn't that just also the weirdest thing? Yeah.
You know what? We'll take it. That's a good one.
That is, again, just like that first sentence, forensic and pastor don't usually go together.
I know, right?
And then here we go, Matrix and the Bible. It's
Right.
kind of interesting.
So tell us a little bit more about yourself. Where did you grow up, and who were the biggest influences in your life?
Well, I actually grew up right here in Mesquite, Texas. My dad, we moved from Oklahoma. We went to college. All of us went to Oklahoma State University. That was a family school. My granddad wrote the alma mater. He was a music professor there. And then we moved down here so my dad could start in public accounting. And my mom worked at TI. It was in Mesquite, and grew up there. And so I was Texan, right? I don't even say transplanted. I typically don't even tell somebody that I was actually born in Oklahoma, but I grew up here. And my dad and my mom were very influential. It was a very faith-based family. He helped to start a Presbyterian church over in Mesquite, and so we were at church all the time, and it was very much a part of our everyday life, and always encouraged to aspire to whatever you want to become, you can become. So it was a very good, loving, encouraging atmosphere. And I was the oldest of three, and so I have that first child, syndrome.
Any other key lessons growing up that you would want to share?
Yes, I grew up I'm a boomer. I won't tell you when, but I'm a boomer.
I don't believe it, but go ahead.
Yes, well, thank you. But that was during the time where women there was a glass ceiling, and there wasn't that upward mobility, and it was still sort of coming out of, my dad was a Depression and then World War and all of that. So it was still the women held down the household, right? That was their job and that was their function. And so to have a career woman, that was very different. But I come from a family with career women, PhDs, and so that was very different to know that I could aspire beyond what the perhaps perceived norm was at that time.
Oh, absolutely. And I love that. Thank you for sharing it. I think for so many women, sometimes they think that there is a glass ceiling, right? And so it's a different time, obviously, but there are still some struggles that women have to face in the workforce.
Well, thank you. I mean, right away we say highly educated with a real foundation of faith. Those are two of the descriptors and attributes I hear of your childhood. And Mesquite, Texas, such as it is. Good for you. Well, let's talk about you as a professional.
Okay.
Right? Kind of talk about that journey. Where'd you go to college? What was your major? Kind of where did it all start with you?
Well, I appreciate you asking that. So I went to Oklahoma State, and that was the given. We would all go there. We didn't even have to ask about that. And my dad got me a job on campus working for the head of department in the accounting department, because he was in accounting at OU, the other Oklahoma school. And I started down the English pathway, the English major pathway, and soon realized this really isn't for me. It just isn't. And got interested in accounting and started accounting classes, and they weren't that easy. And honestly, I'm not that great in math, but there was this other part of it that was puzzles and how do you figure things out and how things have to balance. And, there's a norm. And so it was very interesting to me. And so that's how I graduated from Oklahoma State with a degree in accounting, and I went directly into what that time was Big 8, so that dates me a lot, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and worked there for a number of years, and then transferred to Arthur Young, Dallas.
So let me ask, so right away, how many women were in your graduating class in accounting at Oklahoma State?
I don't even know the number, but I can tell you there were only 2 of us that started Arthur Young at that time. It was all the rest were men. So we were, different.
Yeah, so it was largely a male-dominated industry, or at least profession at that time. You went to the Big 8, which is a really desired place to be, and having started my career kind of in that zeitgeist, I totally understand it. Very impressed. You must have done well in school, obviously had a great resume, and a great place to start a career if you're trying to build it as an accountant. So walk us through that. What was that kind of accounting stage of your career? Where'd you work, and what did you do?
So we did audits. I was in audit. And so in Tulsa, we did a lot of oil and gas related audits. And as it turns out, my dad was an expert in oil and gas accounting and ultimately taught that and wrote books on that. And so that was very interesting to me. And then also banking was also very interesting. So I audited a lot of banks, a lot of savings and loans. And so that became important at a later time in my career. But the audit itself taught you discipline, and it taught you of what things should look like. And an auditor has that professional skepticism of, well, it doesn't really look like it's supposed to look like. And learning that was enticing to me. And later it became a very important part of my career. So I stayed with Arthur Young and transferred down to the Dallas office. And actually, one of my audit clients was American Airlines, but I was a computer auditor for them and transferred down to Dallas when they transferred down here as well, and picked up banks and real estate and the same kind of industries that I did there, and stayed in audit until I met my husband in that firm. And then that was a time in life and in professionalism where you didn't date within the workplace. It was taboo. And so I left and went into private industry as a regional accountant, local for a local family-owned business, and just it didn't fit me. It was the same thing every month, and it was important work. It wasn't that it wasn't important. It was absolutely important, especially to that family. But it wasn't as interesting or engaging as I guess I was looking for at that time.
You know what's interesting is not only what you said, how you said it, like your voice intonation just went lower and slower when you talked about the internal accounting role, right? Versus the energy and excitement and the wider eyes and animation when there was challenges and new problems to solve and variety. So, it sounds like, variety and a new problem and a new challenge are pretty core to your sense of excitement while being what you're looking for in a role. Would that be accurate?
It is accurate. And problem solving,
Yeah.
Using what you do know. Like I ultimately became in this journey a forensic accountant and a fraud investigator, and that was back before those terms were actually coined. And people would say, well, what? Is that accounting for dead people, forensic accounting, accounting for dead people? I said, no. Think of, and this was, today I can describe it as, think of CSI. It's kind of like CSI, but with numbers and documents and interviews, and you're going to figure out what happened. And that led into what ultimately became my passion, and that was litigation support from a financial and fraud and forensic perspective.
So you went external to internal. Internal was a little less exciting, albeit important. So tell us about that really kind of big pivot to entrepreneurism.
Well, I actually went from private back into public accounting with a small firm that focused on real estate and everything it touched, and that includes all the things I had learned about in my pathway, savings and loans and banking and real estate and public markets, and all of that is different every single day, right? And in Dallas with the big real estate companies, Lincoln Property, Trammell Crow, those were our clients. And they stepped into the public markets, and we were their first IPOs. And so it was all very interesting and exciting, and you're learning at a 30,000-foot level to really be analytical and be strategic and help your clients do that. And that was absolutely something new every day. And that background of knowledge, core knowledge, business knowledge, world knowledge, ultimately came in very handy when I had the opportunity to work on a large litigation case having to do with real estate and golf courses and savings and loans, and it was a huge puzzle. You had to figure things out, and I had the opportunity to lead that and fell in love with it. Fell in love with the litigation itself, the processes, and where's truth, we're wearing the white hats, where's what is right, and how should it look.
Wow. Yeah, and again, your animation around a problem. I'm excited.
Right.
I wake up. That's great. So you led something, I think, to good resolution, as you had shared in our pre-conversation, which is great. And so already you've been on a bit of a roller coaster. Big A. Internal counsel back to an accounting forensic for it's a little bit of a new kind of industry or profession. Big case, lots of excitement, a lot of problems, scale to the impact. What happened then?
Well, I reached the probably top of where I could go in that firm. It was during a time where women were just coming into their own in public accounting, and it's still very patriarchal. the real estate, the banking, the public accounting, the legal, that's still very patriarchal. And this is the 80s and 90s. And I found that I was training guys that were being promoted, and I wasn't. And so I jumped out and started my own firm, CPA firm, and focused on litigation, the things I loved, real estate and debt restructure and bankruptcy and, that kind of stuff. And landed a very large case that ultimately took me globally to manage it. It was for the Department of Justice in D.C., and it was a huge puzzle. We had warehouses of documents all over the country that had been in storage for years. So you would open a box because you figure out what happened by the documents, and you put it together like a puzzle, and then you figure out who the players were, and then you figure out what you want to ask that player. So you then create depositions questions. And it's just fascinating to watch the truth unfold, and then you ask your question, what is truth and its perspective, right? And so it was a great journey, and it launched us into, became a boutique firm. I started my own CPA firm, and it was a boutique firm in litigation support and expert testimony.
So let's explore that pivot. I mean, one is, I think you found your strum, as I would say, your flow when it comes to a puzzle, a problem with large impacts, with some sort of truth and perception of truth and rightness at the end of it. It sounds like, but that was not a small decision to move from the stability of a firm where you've had some real success to your own thing. Just explore that with us. How did you make that decision? How did it feel? And ultimately, what made the decision to kind of jump for you?
Well, what helped me make that decision? I really felt like I had maxed where I was going, and I wasn't happy at that plateau. I didn't want to stay at that plateau teaching everybody else how to get promoted and not. And I had kids at that time too, and so and public accounting is a lot of work, not necessarily a lot of control over your schedule. I had little kids at that time, and had the opportunity to jump and do some small cases that would keep a little cash flow coming in, and then had, interestingly, a referral from my friends at that firm. They were conflicted out of this DOJ case, and I contacted the DOJ. They invited me up to pitch to DC, and I, little teeny tiny. How did we do that? I don't know. It seems providential to me, given the rest of the journey. So
to echo a little bit of what I heard, is one reason for the leap, clearly as I'd reached the limit and I wanted to grow. Two, it was a larger life decision too.
Yes.
And so many times I hear that, right? Which is I had less control and I wanted more control.
Right.
In your case, and if it's what I hear is time with especially
kids.
children.
I had to have the flexibility
yes.
to take care of the kids and to do whatever's needed for them. They're 13 months apart. They're little, and that's a lot.
Was it a scary moment, or were you ready for it? Like how did it feel as you remember at that time?
No, I can't remember too many times when fear was a factor. It was more, it's just another chapter of the journey. I mean, there are some bigger challenges more recently that were filled with fear and overcome with faith. And so that's kind of where we are currently. But at that time, it was just, when you're young and I was young relatively, but if this doesn't work, I'll try something else, right?
Sure.
And so I just wasn't concerned about that. I was more focused on, I can't do this anymore. I can't for many, many reasons. And that looks okay, and I can have hope and an opportunity to pursue what interests me and not trying to do what interests and benefits somebody else.
American Narratives is brought to you by CMP. For For over 25 years, CMP has provided talent solutions for companies across industries. We have a presence in every region in the United States and globally.
CMP provides innovative, high-impact solutions across the full talent lifecycle. This includes enhancing careers while mitigating the risk of a downsize event through high-touch, high-tech outplacement and career development offerings, taking the guesswork out of hiring through high-definition recruiting and predictive assessment, and building capability through assessment, coaching, and training solutions.
And as a minority and woman-owned firm, we are deeply committed to making our world a better and more inclusive place.
Please visit us at careermp.com, where you'll find a number of resources to support your talent and development needs. Again, careermp.com.
Hope to see you soon.
So you had, I think, a high tolerance for some ambiguity and a less resistance to change than maybe some have, right? And that probably served you well when it came to jumping in. All right, so you started your own thing. You did some cases. My verbiage had your shingle out, right?
Yes, that's a good one.
Yeah. So what happened next? Kind of walk us through that.
Well, I was in public accounting and did this big case, and then we finished it, and so I did smaller cases, and my kids were getting older, and I was always very involved in their life, room mom, Girl Scout leader, Boy Scout camp, all of that, church, that we were very involved in the church life, and I raised them in the church, and we began doing church things together. They were old enough now to go on mission trips or, do life in the church, and that was really important to me growing up, and so I wanted it to be an anchor and a cornerstone for them, just as it had been for me. And one of those adventures took us down to Mexico, and this is a West Plano, Texas church with West Plano, Texas kids who had grown up in the bubble of West Plano.
Yeah, and those are, for a national audience, a fairly affluent area.
A fairly affluent area, not a lot of exposure either outside of where they grew up. And so now we're going to pile them all in these 2 Greyhound buses, and we're going to take them down and drive them across the border, which is very eye-opening if you haven't done that, and then on to this big piece of dirt, and we're going to build houses for people who don't have anything. And I can remember the impact on the kids, but the impact on me driving out on this literally big red dirt field, and there was a woman standing there beside what was her shelter, and it was 4 sticks and a blanket, and they were standing by a big blue barrel, which was their water. And she had kids running around, and that's all that she had. And her name was Elizabeth, and we helped her build a plywood, tin roof, cinder block house.
And it changed her life.
It changed her life,
Yeah.
It changed our life, it changed my life. And it really stuck with me, her perseverance, but also her joy in life. That was something that you had to grapple with if you come from an affluent area and family that did not ever really we always had what we needed. It wasn't overly, but we had what we needed. And to see someone who barely squeaks by day, and you have no idea how she gets by, but the joy that she had from her faith, I've been praying for 2 years that God would build me a house, and here that prayer is answered in the form of 2 Greyhound buses full of West Plano kids that don't know which end of the hammer to use, right? And it's just, and to watch all that unfold really began to change my perspective on life, what is important, what is happiness, what is joy, where is my North Star really?
So you got into a bit of, this was a life experience which became a career experience for you. Tell us about that.
Over several years, because I had my practice, remember, which I really liked, like my work and my forensics and all that, and I didn't want to give that up, and yet there was this tug and this pull and there's more to life than that. And so I ultimately had the opportunity to teach confirmation class in our church to my daughter's class. I had helped with my son. He's just 1 year ahead. And had grown up in the church, knew all the stories, but it was at church 2 or 3 times a week, and realized in preparing to teach this class that I knew the stories, but I didn't really understand how they hung together. The thread of theology, knowledge of God, that went all the way through from Genesis to Revelation, and what that says to us as humans, and what we're supposed to do with the world and with each other and with God, and all of that. And it really felt like I had missed something, like I must have been asleep when all that was happening. And so I decided to go to, just for me, not for anybody else, but to go to school, to start seminary. But I had long talks with God and said, but I'm not going to go into the ministry. You help me have my practice. I'm good at it. I really like it. I can take care of my family this way. And so I went part-time. So I was raising my kids, had my practice, and I went part-time to seminary also. And I can remember just walking on campus, and there was a different feel to the air. I mean, it was just automatically different. And it just soothed my soul. And every class I haven't been in a college classroom in decades at this time, and I soaked it up. I couldn't wait to get to class. And I couldn't wait. I just hungered for it. And I was talking to one of my professors at the time. We were talking about a project we were doing, and she said, "So what is your pathway? What is your journey?" And I said, "Well, I'm not planning to go into ministry. I'm planning to stay and just use this as part of my life." And she looked at me and she said, "I think you might want to rethink that." And that next summer, I led my first pilgrimage to Israel, to the Holy Land, and got to see the things and walk in the steps and touch all the stones and smell the smells where Jesus was. And that totally changed my life. Like literally in the middle of the Jordan River, it was a moment. And I knew God was talking to me and said, "I've been preparing you, and I have something else I want you to do." And it still took a while. I was not ready just to close that door and open another. So there was some apprehension there, but it was not scary. It was comforting and comfortable and felt right. And so I did it it took me a long time to finish school, go through the pastoral path, and ultimately go on staff at the church where I'd raised my kids. And
So you did move in. This current phase, really is a calling.
it is a calling.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I'm inspired by it. I think it's, and of course, there's so much significance to the River Jordan, obviously, right? As far as renewal,
So many.
yeah,
Yeah.
renewal and change, and baptized and moving forward as a new life. So that's a whole different dissect. We won't go there, but so you went on staff. You became pastor in a sense?
Pastor.
Okay.
I'm an ordained Methodist deacon, so an ordained pastor.
Interesting. That's fascinating.
I know.
Yeah.
I had a lot of initials behind my name already, but now I have some in front of, right? So I went on staff, but I wasn't. I was focused on mission and taking the church to the world and opening the church to the world, and really finding how it is we are supposed to, what is our responsibility to God and others, and but to do it, not just read about it or learn about it, but to physically see. And so in that adventure, we started two nonprofits in the church, very unique and unusual. We started a nonprofit for a service agency, really, but it started as the biggest branch was a food pantry. And then we started a global ministry, which was providing health care in Costa Rica, which is a portal into a community of need through which you can build trust and provide for human needs. And that the portal into the food pantry here in Collin County in Plano opened my eyes to the fact that there is homelessness and poverty and hunger, and our children are sleeping in cars, and it has evolved a lot since then. It's grown, unfortunately, the homeless population, the abuse. And so through that part of the journey of working in the church, I ultimately heard and felt the call to go even farther. Yes, this is good, you're on the right path, but I'm not done with you, right? And stepped out of the church, stepped out of the local church, still as a pastor, to open a ministry, a nonprofit, that provided housing and support services for homeless single women, moms, and their children. And that was Agape. And that was in 2013, and we started with nothing, literally, nothing. We ultimately purchased a small house, and that was everything. We had 2 women, young girls, 18 and 20, I think, one with a 10-month-old. And they were staying in the house, and then one of the bedrooms was a counseling office, and one of the bedrooms was for the 2 of the bedrooms for the women, and then the kitchen was everything, just like your kitchen, right? Grand Central. It was also the board room, so we would have to push aside the Cheerios in order to have a board meeting or a staff meeting, and it was everything. But it was, it was good because it was all compact, and we were right there in each other's business, and that grew. It grew because homelessness was there, and although we didn't hang out our shingle, to use your term, as an abuse recovery or a domestic violence shelter, what we learned was a primary cause of homelessness among women is abuse, and they didn't have anywhere to go because there's no shelters in Collin County for homeless, and so we evolved into a trauma-informed care transitional housing agency. 90% of our women, and therefore our children, are abuse survivors, everything from emotional abuse to sex trafficking. And that population has grown and grown and grown, and we have expanded blessedly with it. And then COVID came and changed everybody's world. But an offshoot of that is many of our women were still fragile, because fragile from abuse, but also fragile economically. So our whole goal is to help them gain enough education and workforce experience to change their lives and change the trajectory of their children's lives. We call that self-sufficiency. And so we require our women to choose a vocational path. And education is also financial. So financial coaching, we're going to help you figure out why you need a good credit score, what a credit score is, why you can't have an eviction and rent. So a lot of very passionate, compassionate, real life skills is what we wrap our women and our children with the goal that when they graduate from us, a year to 18 months, that they will have a new job, usually at least twice what they were making when they came in, and the ability to stay stable and take care of their kids. Well, with COVID, many of them lost their jobs. Many people lost their jobs. And so they didn't have the savings, they don't have a support system. If they had a support system, they would be living with that support system instead of us. And so we took them back in during COVID. We took in 6 families back in and launched them again. But after COVID, rents started escalating so much that even if our women doubled their income, they couldn't pay rent. And so we struggled with that for many years about how we're not going to let them become homeless again. That's not happening. So how do we do this? And then that brings us to where we are today.
Couple things. We have 2 more line of questioning before we let you
Yeah.
go. One is, that's a very inspirational transition, and it really gets to that legacy calling. That's my words, not yours, but what I'll characterize to where your career's gone. And talk about a journey from Big 8 to pushing the Cheerios aside to conduct a board meeting in this nonprofit, and then navigating all of that through the curveballs that were COVID. To now I know I'm going to ask you about Jericho House, and then I'm going to ask you a little bit about kind of golden nuggets you want to leave to others who are earlier in their career journey that you wish you knew or glad you knew. But let's go with Jericho House, because I know that's kind of currently on the
right.
Kind of where are you at with that?
So because our women couldn't rent, they didn't have the income to rent, we decided to build affordable housing. And that, you asked me earlier, was it fearful? So this one was.
Okay.
So how in the world, I've accomplished different things that I never thought I would journey into, but building an apartment complex wasn't one of them. And so how in the world, nonprofits get by, with barely anything. Mm-hmm. So how am I going to run the nonprofit, keep our women housed, pay our staff, and raise what started out to be $6 million and is now $10.5 million? How is that gonna work? How in the world? I have no idea what I'm doing here. Now I don't know the way forward. And I think this is my most important lesson. It's certainly, to me personally, my most important lesson. You asked what I wish I knew. Well, when you cannot do something on your own, then that is a divine appointment, because God's asked you to do it, and God will provide. And it really, I've known that, and I've leaned into that pretty much my whole life, because that was our core teaching. But never like this. Never like, there is no way I did this or Agape did this without God's provision. And so one of my lessons is, how many times in the Bible does it say, fear not? How many times?
Every time the angel appears.
That's right. How many times does it say, be strong and courageous? I will not leave you. I will not forsake you. I will provide. Those are the stories. Those are the facts, the evidence of God's faithfulness all the way from Genesis to Revelation, the faithfulness of God. And obedience and faithfulness are part of that partnership. And so we do it together. We collectively change the world together, fix what's broken in the world together for the people of God. And that's the big takeaway that I've learned. And so we have troubles every day, right? Every day we have a new challenge in what we do. Everybody does. But putting it in perspective of, I don't have to be able to do this by myself. Yeah. And I need other humans to come along and be disciples and journey this journey with me. Because, you mentioned something about legacy. Well, in my journey, I've started reading an author and a pastor, and really picked up a lot of what he was communicating, and that's Mark Batterson, who is the senior pastor at National Community Church in Washington, D.C., and he's written a lot of books. That when I started this journey of Agape, actually, I would read and pick up encouragement from his words and the stories about obedience and faithfulness that he would bring up, and I would just...
So you did answer the question about your favorite book.
Yeah, well,
I think you just did.
But he's written
the whole interview.
He's written like 24 books, so I couldn't necessarily tell
Maybe your favorite author.
What my favorite author, but he is one of my most favorite authors. He had something that he has said something that's really stuck with me, and it is, I will misquote him, but you'll get the essence. Legacy is not about what you do. Legacy is about what others do with what you've been able to accomplish. And that is the essence of Jericho, right? It's not for us. Mm-hmm. It's certainly not for me. It will outlive me. It's for our women and their children and the community and what they will do. So he also says it's a dream within a dream, right? So it's an opportunity for the villagers to dream, because I'm not worried about being homeless next month. I'm stable. I can pay this rent.
So what it does for others. I
love
love
that.
that, paraphrase or otherwise. I got it. I love that recast because it is about others, not yourself. And, I mean, my very simple, rudimentary language around that. It's beautiful. Where do people find you, and where do they find out more about Agape, Jericho House, and how do they contribute?
Oh. They find us on our website. That's the best and easiest place. And go to Agape first. Jericho has its website, but go to Agape first. And you can find us at www.hope, Hope, and then the number 4, Agape, AGAPE.org, www.hope4agape.org. And explore what we do, listen to some of the testimonies of our graduates and see how you might can contribute or get involved. And what touches your heart the most is really fulfilling to not only you, but the people we serve, because that changes their lives when they know somebody else cares about them. And then Jericho Village, the village we're building in Wiley, we hope to be completed and at least begin occupancy by Christmas. So we have roofs, and hopefully we'll start bricking very soon, and hopefully it's small. It's 38 units, so it's designed to be a model for other municipalities to copy. We want them to copy it because it's income-based housing with wraparound support services that our whole workforce can afford, and that lifts the economic stability of a community.
So it's a working poor often, the folks who really need that leg up.
Yeah.
And housing shortages, it couldn't be more acute issue than it is right now across much of the nation and
Right.
the world for that matter.
And it's income-based, but it's also stair-stepping. So it's also for our workforce. That's the predominant number of units will be for our firefighters and our school teachers and our entry-level medical folks who can't pay the exorbitant rents right now, but they have a trajectory of stability if they can just get a strong foundation. And so that's what we're about at Agape and at Jericho.
Last thing before we let you go. You've had this incredible journey. I'm inspired by it.
I'm inspired.
There's some pivots there that felt very natural in the moment,
Yeah.
but took steps to get there, going to school, back to school after 2 decades or so, and then being able to accept inch by inch, maybe precept by precept, this calling to get into where you're at right today. And so that's instructive in and of itself. But what are the golden nuggets? Information is gold.
Yes.
It's even more important than gold. What are the couple of things that you would like to share, you're glad you knew or wish you would have known perhaps 30, 40 years ago when you started this whole journey?
Well, life, it is a cliche, but it's not. Life really is a journey, and each phase of the journey is a chapter. And you don't have to settle, right? It's like I didn't have to settle with being in public accounting at that level, at that plateau, not controlling my destiny per se. And also, you're never too old for a huge life change. You're just not. It is listen to your calling, listen to your heart, and find something that fixes your own heart, perhaps, and can be soothe your soul. My grandmother used to say, I'm having this for the good of my soul. So find what's good for your soul and pour your heart into it.
Love it. And, the fact that, that spiritual side, being cognizant of it and knowing that feeding that spirit really enables so many other good things in our life. And to neglect that is to our own peril.
I think
honestly.
so too. Yeah.
I agree with
so
that.
too.
I really do. Whatever your faith system is, I will bear testimony of that.
Yeah.
You've got to feed your spirit.
Absolutely.
Positive stuff.
Yes.
You do. Well, thank you so much, Janet.
I'm
Thank
just so
you.
honored, and thank you for allowing me just a time to chatter here and share
No,
this
this
and
is the-
being welcoming to do that.
I loved it. I learned a lot. I'm inspired by it. I know our listeners are too.
Definitely inspired. Make sure you tune in and check out Agape in the Jericho House.
Yes, please do. It's I've been exposed to them for the last few years, and she undersells it. They're truly changing lives and communities, and creating a template that I think could definitely be poured in and have impact largely. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Cool.
American Narratives is brought to you by CMP, a talent and career transition firm providing solutions across the full talent lifecycle.
From recruiting to talent development to outplacement, we help leaders improve our world through deep insights and impactful talent solutions.
For more information, visit us at careermp.com.